Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Dr. Fakhr-ul-Islam, Director, Pakistan Study Center, University of Peshawar. Ladies and gentlemen, in this slide of my presentation, I am going to give you a comparison between some general features of 1956 and 1962 constitutions of Pakistan. Let me explain in the beginning that every constitution is basically the description of the powers and functions of all the organs of a government. So, every government has three major organs, that is legislature, judiciary and executive. So every constitution has the details about these three organs of government, and then there are some additional things, as in the modern constitutions you have the fundamental rights chapter as an integral part of those constitutions. So we will be discussing those organs one by one, but here there are some general features of the two constitutions. As it is known that both these constitutions are written constitutions. The question is that, is there any unwritten constitution in the world? Yes, the answer is yes. The Constitution of the United Kingdom is an unwritten constitution. The difference between a written and unwritten constitution is that written constitution is the one the provisions of which are written are codified in a document. On the other hand, the unwritten constitution is the one the provisions of which are not codified or written in a document. Actually, the unwritten constitution is amalgamation in a document which has some traditions and norms of that society. So the 1956 Constitution, being a written constitution, is comprised of 234 articles. On the other hand, the 1962 Constitution spread over 250 articles. So comparison is that the 1962 Constitution was lengthier than the 1956 Constitution. Here is an interesting thing which I would like to bring into your notice, that even these two constitutions were the lengthiest constitutions of the contemporary world of that time. I mean, in the 1956 Constitution, when it was enforced in Pakistan, and there were some constitutions all over the world, it was the lengthiest. Then again, the 1962 Constitution, in 1960s, there were constitutions in the world, especially India, Britain, United States, etc. Again, it was the lengthiest. What is the reason? The reason is that any country which doesn't have a strong legal system brings everything to the provisions of the Constitution. So in this way, their constitutions are quite lengthy documents. Look at the United States of America. It is a constitution spreading over only 7 articles. The reason is that that country has a very organized and strong legal system. So almost everything under the blue sky is not brought into the fold of the Constitution. The second provision is Islamic provision. I mean, this is something which is specific to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. You may not find this provision in the constitution of other democratic countries, but since we are a special country, this country was achieved according to an ideology, a slogan. Therefore, when the constitution making process started, there were some people in the assembly and outside of the assembly who raised the demand for the incorporation of Islamic provisions in the 1956 as well as in the 1962 constitutions. One thing is common between the two constitutions, that the objectives resolution was in the preambles of both the constitutions. It was in the preamble of the 1956 Constitution. It was in the preamble of the 1962 Constitution as well. Here we are not going to give some details of the Islamic provisions, but one thing which was again common between the two constitutions was that there were bodies in these constitutions. In the 1956 Constitution, the Organization of Islamic Research and Instructions. This was an organization which was responsible for making some Islamic laws or guiding the government in terms of ensuring the society based on the Islamic provisions and instructions. In the 1962 Constitution, again, a body was there with a different name, Advisory Council of Islamic Ideology. Again, the task assigned to that Advisory Council of Islamic Ideology in the 1962 Constitution was that it was responsible for advising the government how to frame laws and how to Islamize the existing laws in Pakistan. In the 1956 Constitution, the symbolic name of Pakistan was Islamic Republic of Pakistan. But in the 1962 Constitution, there was a major shift visible there. The Islamic prefix was removed from the name of Pakistan. I mean, when on 23rd March 1962, the 1962 Constitution was enforced, the name of Pakistan was Republic of Pakistan. So it triggered controversy in the country, and so many people started demanding that the original name of Pakistan should be restored. And finally, the government, accepted the demand. And the first constitutional amendment introduced in the 1962 Constitution was that once again the name was given to Pakistan as Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So, I mean, the Islamic provisions were almost the same with some minor differences between the two constitutions. The third most important thing is that in any constitution you have to see that what is the form of government in that country. It matters a lot. Under the 1956 Constitution, the form of government was parliamentary. And under the 1962 Constitution, it was presidential. Now, there is a technical definition of the parliamentary form of government, and there is again a technical definition of presidential form of government. Parliamentary form of government is that form of government in which the executive is normally answerable, accountable, and responsible to the parliament. On the other hand, in presidential form of government, the executive is responsible to the president only. It is not supposed to be accountable to the assembly or the parliament. But when we look into the to the parliamentary form of government in the 1956 Constitution, we come to the conclusion it was not a fully parliamentary government, because in the fully parliamentary government, the powers, the executive powers, are exercised by the prime minister only. But in the 1956 Constitution, most of the powers pertaining to executive were exercised by the president. So we can say that there was a parliamentary form of government in the 1956 Constitution, but that was quasi-parliamentary form of government. It was not parliamentary government in the real sense of the term. Coming to the 1962 Constitution, where the presidential form of government was enforced, here the president was the source of all legislative, executive, and judicial powers. And he was so powerful that Justice Kiani, the late, he passed an erroneous remark about that 1962 Constitution was a constitution in which president was just like the clock tower of Lailpur or Faisalabad. So the clock tower of Faisalabad is visible from every dimension of the city, and president in the 1962 Constitution was visible from every dimension of the Constitution. So that was the form of government. Then we come to this federal system. I mean, federal system was enforced in both the Constitution. Federation is a form of government in which the federating units or provinces surrender their individual sovereignty to a central authority. So, as per definition, in both the constitutions, we had federal form of government. But unfortunately, again, in both the constitutions, it was not federal system in the real sense of the term. For example, in a ideal federal system, you have to distribute evenly powers between the federation and the federating units are the central government and the provinces. But unfortunately, in both the constitutions, the tilt was towards the center, and the center was actually stronger than the provinces. There was no real concept of provincial autonomy. In the federal legislative list, the number of subjects was more than the number of subjects in the provincial legislative subjects. I mean, it was not actually a federal system in both the constitutions. There are some symbolic things. For example, in all federal form of governments in the world, we have two houses in the parliament, or in the Congress, in the case of United States of America. But these two constitutions, strangely enough, they had federal forms, but there were one house, unicameral legislatures in both the constitution. Only National Assembly was in the 1956, and only National Assembly was in the 1962 Constitution. These are some general characteristics of both the constitutions. You see that some of the things are common, some of the things are not common. There are some compatibilities, there are some incompatibilities, there are some similarities, and there are some dissimilarities in both the constitutions.